Have you ever felt completely invisible, like a ghost moving through a world that refuses to see you? That was Amelia's reality. Every night in the silent, gleaming towers of downtown Chicago, she cleaned the messes of people who never knew her name. They saw her shabby clothes, her tired eyes, and they judged. But they had no idea who she really was, or the powerful secret she carried. Tonight, their world of casual cruelty is about to collide with a past they could never imagine, and the consequences will be unforgettable. Stay with me for a story that proves heroes aren't always the ones in the spotlight. Amelia Hayes was the daughter of a ghost and a memory. Her father, Sergeant Michael Hayes, was a decorated war hero who died in Afghanistan when she was just a child. His memory was a collection of faded photographs and a folded flag in a box. Her mother, Sarah, was worn down by grief and a relentless illness that drained their savings and her strength, leaving Amelia an orphan at 16. She ended up with her mother's sister Brenda in a cramped, dreary house on the outskirts of the city. Brenda's kindness was as thin as her watery soup. She saw Amelia not as family, but as a burden. The day Amelia turned 18, she packed a small bag containing her father's medals and walked away, choosing the terrifying uncertainty of the city over the crushing weight of her aunt's resentment. Now, her life was a cycle of cleaning supplies and exhaustion, working as a janitor in a high-rise corporate office, a world away from the life she might have had. The scent of industrial lemon cleaner and stale coffee hung in the air of the 30th floor office. Amelia pushed her mop across the polished concrete floor, its rhythmic sloshing the only sound in the cavernous, dark space. The city lights of Chicago glittered like scattered jewels through the floor-to-ceiling windows, a world of glamour she could see but never touch. A sharp click of heels on the floor made her flinch. It was Jessica, the marketing team lead, grabbing her designer coat. She paused by a large potted fern, holding a half-empty cup of expensive latte. She glanced at Amelia, her eyes filled with a casual, dismissive scorn. "Oops," Jessica said, her voice dripping with false sincerity as she let the cup tumble from her hand. It landed with a wet smack, splashing a creamy brown stain across the floor Amelia had just finished. "You'll get that, won't you?" she added, not waiting for an answer before striding away, leaving the mess and the humiliation behind. Amelia knelt, the rough paper towel scratching her cold fingers. The spilled latte wasn't just a mess, it was a message, a reminder of her place. The next morning, the office was alive with the low hum of productivity. As Amelia quietly emptied the trash cans, she heard Jessica's voice, amplified for performance. "Ugh, does anyone else smell that? It's like sour milk. I think the cleaning service missed a spot last night." A few of her colleagues chuckled politely. Amelia saw Kevin, a junior analyst, who had sometimes offered her a kind smile, stare intently at his screen, pretending not to hear. The heat of shame crept up her neck. She was a ghost here, a ghost who was expected to be not only invisible, but also perfect. Each passive-aggressive comment was a tiny paper cut, and she was covered in them, bleeding in a way no one could see. She just gripped the plastic trash bag tighter and moved to the next desk, her face a neutral mask. Her clothes felt like a costume of poverty she couldn't take off. Today it was a faded grey sweatshirt from a church donation bin, the cuffs frayed and thinning. She remembered her mother, Sarah, sitting under a dim lamp, trying to sew a patch onto the knee of her only pair of jeans. Her mother's hand, swollen from her illness, had struggled with the needle, but she had hummed a soft tune, trying to make the act of mending feel like an act of love instead of one of desperation. Now, surrounded by people in crisp, tailored suits and expensive shoes, Amelia felt the weight of that memory. These clothes weren't just fabric. They were the story of her life, a story of loss and struggle she wore for everyone to see and judge. She fought the lump in her throat and focused on the smudges on the glass door, scrubbing until her reflection was a blurry, unrecognisable shape. Her hand instinctively went to the pocket of her jeans, her fingers closing around a small, hard object. It was a pin, a tiny replica of the American flag her father had worn on his uniform. It was her secret talisman, a tangible link to the man she barely remembered. A flash of a memory, sharp and vivid, cut through the haze of the present. A 7-year-old Amelia in a stiff black dress, the deafening sound of a rifle salute, men in immaculate uniforms handing her mother a perfectly folded flag. She hadn't understood the finality of it then, only the strange, heavy silence that followed. That pin was her proof that he was real, that the quiet strength she sometimes felt inside her came from somewhere, from someone honourable. It reminded her that she was the daughter of a hero, even if she spent her days cleaning up after people who saw her as nothing. After her mother passed, life with Aunt Brenda in a rundown bungalow in Cicero had been a different kind of poverty. It wasn't just the lack of money, it was a poverty of spirit. The house always smelled of stale cigarette smoke and resentment. Brenda, a woman whose own dreams had withered on the vine, saw Amelia's grief as an inconvenience. "Stop moping around," she'd snap, her voice a low growl. "You're not the only one with problems. You're just like your mother, too sensitive for your own good." Food was scarce, and warmth was scarcer. Amelia learned to make herself small, to move silently through the cramped rooms, to expect nothing. The house wasn't a home. It was a waiting room, a place she had to endure until she could finally escape into a life of her own, no matter how difficult that life might be. The escape happened on a rainy Tuesday, the night of her 18th birthday. Brenda had forgotten, of course. While her aunt snored in front of the television, Amelia quietly packed her life into a worn school backpack. A few changes of clothes, a tattered copy of her favourite book, and the wooden box containing her father's 2 bronze stars and his Purple Heart. Each medal felt impossibly heavy in her hand. She slipped out the back door, the cold rain, a shocking baptism into her new life. Walking towards the distant glow of the city's train station, she felt a terrifying cocktail of fear and exhilaration. She was utterly alone, with less than $50 to her name. But for the first time in years, she was free. The chilling wind whipping down the empty street felt like a promise of something new, a harsh but honest beginning. A small kindness could feel like a lifeline. Kevin, the junior analyst, was the only one who ever really spoke to her. One evening, as she was replacing a liner in a shredder bin, he stopped by her cart. "Hey," he said, his smile a little shy. "You do a really great job. This place is spotless because of you. Don't let Jessica get to you. She's intense." His words were simple, but they landed on her bruised spirit like a soothing balm. It was the first time anyone in this office had acknowledged her as a person, not just a function. A tiny, fragile blossom of hope unfurled in her chest. Maybe not everyone here was made of ice. Maybe there was a place for a little warmth, even on the 30th floor. The next day, Kevin found her in the empty break room as she was refilling the sugar packets. "Taking a break?" he asked, leaning against the counter. He talked about his ambition to become a senior partner before he was 30. She found herself telling him a little about her dream of one day taking community college classes, maybe studying horticulture. For 10 minutes, they weren't an analyst and a janitor. They were just 2 young people in a big city, sharing quiet aspirations under the harsh fluorescent lights. He listened intently, his brown eyes kind and focused. When he left, he said, "You should do it, Amelia. I bet you'd be great at it." The way he said her name, as if it were a normal, everyday word, echoed in her ears long after he was gone. It made her feel, for a fleeting moment, like she belonged. The illusion of camaraderie was shattered the next afternoon. Tiffany, one of Jessica's loyal followers, cornered Amelia by the elevators. Her smile was sharp and predatory. "A little piece of advice," she said, her voice a low purr. "Kevin is Jessica's. They've been on again, off again for a year. She sees him as her property. If you know what's good for you, you'll remember what your job is and stick to it." The threat was veiled but unmistakable. "She can make your life a lot harder than it already is." Tiffany's eyes scanned Amelia's worn sneakers with contempt before she turned and walked away, her heels clicking, an arrogant rhythm on the marble floor. The small warmth Kevin had offered now felt like bait in a trap. Amelia felt the walls of her invisibility closing in around her again, thicker than before. That night, taking a full trash bag to the dumpster in the back alley, she heard a sound, a faint, desperate mewing. Following the noise, she found a tiny ball of black and white fur shivering in a greasy cardboard box. A kitten, no older than a few weeks, with enormous green eyes that stared up at her with a mixture of terror and hope. It was just as lost and alone as she felt. The city was a cold, indifferent monster, and this tiny creature stood no chance. Without a second thought, Amelia gently scooped up the kitten, tucking him inside her jacket. His tiny, cold body trembled against hers. In that moment, her own problems seemed to shrink. She had a new mission, to protect this small, helpless life. It was a purpose, a flicker of light in her solitary darkness. She named him Gus, her new roommate and her most dangerous secret. By day, Gus lived in the forgotten corner of the janitor's closet on her floor, nestled in a makeshift bed of clean rags. Amelia would sneak him scraps of her lunch and a small container of water, her heart pounding every time she opened the closet door. The fear of being caught was constant. An animal, especially a stray, was a fireable offence, a violation of a dozen health and safety rules. But when she held Gus after her shift, feeling his tiny motor of a purr vibrating against her chest, the risk felt worth it. His unconditional affection was a balm to her soul. For the first time in a long time, someone was happy to see her. Someone depended on her. In the quiet solitude of the closet, surrounded by the smell of chemicals, they were a tiny, secret family of two. Jessica's cruelty took on a new, more public form. During a team huddle, she connected her phone to the room's Bluetooth speaker. Suddenly, the opening chords of Material Girl filled the space. "Oh, whoops!" she exclaimed with theatrical surprise, just as Amelia was wiping down the conference table. "Wrong playlist!" She then looked directly at Amelia. "Then again, we could all use a little motivation to upgrade our assets, right?" The team exchanged uncomfortable glances and forced, nervous chuckles. Amelia saw Kevin among them. He laughed too, a weak, hollow sound that cut her deeper than any of Jessica's insults. He refused to meet her gaze, his eyes fixed on a meaningless chart on the wall. The public performance of her humiliation was complete, and the one person she thought was an ally had joined the chorus. Later that day, their paths crossed in a deserted hallway. Kevin stopped, looking deeply uncomfortable. "Amelia, about earlier," he started, but couldn't finish. He couldn't even look at her. All she could see was the stark, pathetic cowardice in his face. He was afraid of Jessica, of losing his place in the office hierarchy, of being associated with the lowest person on the totem pole. The kindness he'd shown her wasn't real. It was a cheap commodity he couldn't afford to spend when it might cost him something. "It's fine," she said, her voice flat and cold. "I get it." She walked past him without another glance. The brief, foolish hope she had nurtured for him withered and died, turning to ash in her chest. She had learned a valuable lesson. Some people will only be kind to you when no one is watching. The next day, disaster struck. An unusually curious security guard was doing a floor sweep and heard a faint sound from the janitor's closet. He opened the door just as Jessica was walking by. Her eyes widened, first in surprise, then in malicious glee. "Well, well, well," she said, striding into the closet. She picked up a terrified Gus by the scruff of his neck, holding him out as if he were a piece of garbage. "What is this vermin doing in here? This is a disgusting health code violation. I am reporting this to building management immediately." Amelia rushed over, her heart in her throat. "Please don't," she begged. "He's not hurting anyone. I was going to take him to a shelter." Jessica just smirked. "Too late. Some people just don't belong in a professional environment." Her words were aimed at Gus, but her eyes were locked on Amelia. As Jessica's voice echoed in the suddenly silent office, a profound stillness fell over the floor. The conversation stopped. The clicking of keyboards ceased. All heads turned towards the main elevators. Standing there, flanked by two stern-looking executives, was a man who commanded attention without saying a word. He was in his late 50s, with a ramrod-straight posture, sharp grey eyes, and a quiet intensity that spoke of immense power. It was Mr. Robert Thompson, the CEO of the entire parent corporation, a near-mythical figure who hadn't visited the Chicago branch in over 3 years. His unexpected arrival was like a lightning strike, instantly changing the atmospheric pressure of the entire office. He was the king, and they were all just pieces on his chessboard. Mr. Thompson's gaze swept across the office, instantly assessing the strange tableau before him. He saw the ambitious team lead, Jessica, holding a small, trembling kitten. He saw the terrified young janitor, Amelia, her face pale with dread. He saw the entire marketing team frozen like statues at their desks, his eyes honed by years of making billion-dollar decisions, and before that by military discipline, missed nothing. He walked forward, his expensive leather shoes making no sound on the plush carpet. He stopped directly in front of the unfolding drama. What exactly is going on here? His voice was calm, almost quiet, yet it cut through the tension with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. It was not a request for an explanation. It was a demand. Jessica's demeanour shifted in a nanosecond. The sneering bully vanished, replaced by a poised, concerned professional. She carefully placed Gus on the floor, where he immediately scurried behind Amelia's legs. "Mr. Thompson, what an honour to have you visit," she gushed, her smile wide and artificial. "I was just handling a minor sanitation issue. It appears our cleaning staff brought a stray animal onto the premises, a clear violation of company policy. I was about to rectify the situation." She skillfully framed herself as the diligent manager and Amelia as the irresponsible, rule-breaking subordinate. She was playing to the CEO, confident that he, a man of order and efficiency, would appreciate her proactive approach to maintaining a professional environment. She glanced at Amelia with a look of pure triumph. Thompson's gaze remained fixed, but it wasn't on Jessica. He looked past her, his sharp eyes focused on Amelia, who was trying to make herself smaller behind her cleaning cart. He saw the fear in her eyes, but he also saw something else, a flicker of defiance, a quiet resilience. He registered Jessica's sycophantic tone and the subtle cruelty of her words. He had seen countless office politicians like her throughout his career. They were predictable. But the girl, the janitor, she was an unknown variable. "You!" he said, his voice leaving no room for argument, and he pointed a finger not at Jessica, but at Amelia. "In the conference room. Now!" A collective, silent gasp rippled through the office. The king had chosen to speak not to his knight, but to the pawn. The walk to the glass-walled conference room felt like a mile. Amelia was acutely aware of every pair of eyes boring into her back. She could feel their whispers, their speculation, their judgment. She was sure this was the end. She would be fired for bringing Gus, publicly shamed, and cast back out onto the street. Her hands trembled as she pushed open the heavy glass door. The room was cold, dominated by a massive mahogany table. Mr. Thompson was already there, standing by the window, looking out at the sprawling city below. He didn't turn around immediately, letting the silence stretch, letting her dread build. This, she thought, is what it feels like to have your life fall apart in slow motion. She stood by the door, clutching her hands together, waiting for the axe to fall. Finally, he turned to face her. He gestured to one of the plush leather chairs. "Sit," he said. His tone was not harsh, but it was direct. She sat on the very edge of the seat, her back ramrod straight. He sat opposite her, the vast table between them feeling like a chasm. He looked at her, truly looked at her, for the first time. He saw the frayed collar of her shirt, the exhaustion in her young eyes, and the way her hands were clenched in her lap. He picked up a daily personnel report that had been left on the table. He scanned it briefly. "What is your full name?" he asked, his gaze steady and unreadable. The question felt both mundane and monumental, the first step in a formal execution of her employment. Her voice was barely a whisper, a thread of sound in the silent room. "Amelia! Amelia Hayes!" As the name left her lips, she saw a flicker of something in Mr. Thompson's eyes. A change. It was subtle, but it was there. His expression, previously a mask of executive authority, softened almost imperceptibly. He looked down at the name on the personnel sheet, then back up at her. Hayes, he repeated, the name sounding different in his mouth, heavier. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes searching her face as if looking for a ghost. He seemed to be connecting dots she didn't know existed, piecing together a puzzle she wasn't aware of. The atmosphere in the room had shifted from one of interrogation to one of profound, startling curiosity. Hayes, he said again, his voice now quieter, more personal. Tell me, your father, was his name Michael? Sergeant Michael Hayes? Amelia's breath caught in her throat. The question was so specific, so out of place, it felt like a dream. How could this powerful man, this corporate titan, know her father's name and rank? She could only nod, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and confusion. A deep, forgotten well of grief suddenly opened within her. The CEO of this company knew her father. The world tilted on its axis, the cold corporate room suddenly feeling intensely, overwhelmingly personal. She was no longer just a janitor in trouble. She was someone's daughter. Mr. Thompson leaned back in his chair, his gaze distant, as if looking through the walls of the office and into the past. Kandahar, 2008, he began, his voice low and thick with memory. My unit was pinned down, taking heavy fire. I was hit. I couldn't move. Your father, Sergeant Hayes, he ran through open ground under a hail of bullets, and he dragged me to cover. He paused, swallowing hard. He took a round that was meant for me. He shielded me with his own body. Michael Hayes saved my life that day, and he didn't make it home because of it. The sterile air of the conference room was now filled with the dust and smoke of a faraway battlefield. He wasn't Mr. Thompson's CEO anymore. He was Lieutenant Thompson, a man who owed his life to the hero Amelia Hayes had called Dad. He looked at Amelia, his eyes filled with a deep, 20-year-old sorrow. After it happened, I tried to find your mother. I wrote letters, but they were all returned. I was reassigned and I lost track. I never forgave myself for that. He looked at her worn-out clothes, her tired face, and the story of her hardship was written there for him to see. The years of struggle, the neglect, the poverty, it was all a direct consequence of the sacrifice her father had made for him. A wave of profound shame and regret washed over his face. The injustice of it all was a physical presence in the room. He had built an empire, while the daughter of the man who saved him was scrubbing his company's floors for minimum wage. The daughter of Michael Hayes should not be scrubbing floors, he said, his voice resonating with absolute conviction. The statement was not an opinion. It was a decree. It was the correction of a cosmic error. He stood up, his purpose clear and unshakable. He was the bravest man I ever knew. He gave me a second chance at life. The very least I can do is make sure his daughter gets hers. He walked to the door and paused, looking back at her. Stay here. I will be right back. Amelia sat frozen in the chair, the enormity of what had just happened washing over her in waves. It was too much to process. Her father, her ghost of a father, had just reached across time and death to save her. Mr. Thompson strode out of the conference room and into the dead-silent office. Every employee was frozen watching him. He walked directly to Jessica's desk. She stood up, a nervous, questioning smile plastered on her face. Jessica, he said, his voice calm and lethal. Your behaviour is a disgrace to this company's values. Pack your personal belongings. Security will escort you out. The words were delivered like a death sentence. Jessica's face went from shock to disbelief to crimson rage. Before she could utter a word, he turned his attention to Kevin, who was trying to merge with his chair. You, in my office, we're going to have a talk about integrity. The message was clear to everyone. The old regime was over. The culture of casual cruelty had just been publicly executed. Within an hour, everything had changed. The head of human resources, looking flustered and deeply apologetic, presented Amelia with a new employment contract. Her job title was now Junior Project Coordinator. Her salary was more than she had ever dreamed of. But that wasn't all. The contract, included a clause for a fully funded corporate scholarship. She could attend night classes at the University of Chicago, starting next semester, to get the degree she never thought she'd have. Mr. Thompson was not just giving her a job, he was giving her a future, a career, a path out of the shadows. She signed the papers with a trembling hand, the black ink on the page, rewriting her entire life story. She was no longer Amelia the janitor. She was Amelia Hayes, a young woman with a future. The final gift was a set of keys. "This is for a corporate apartment downtown," Mr. Thompson explained, placing them in her palm. "It's fully furnished. It's been empty for months. It's yours for as long as you need it. Consider it back pay for all the years I should have been looking out for you." He saw the question in her eyes before she could ask it. "And yes," he added, a rare small smile touching his lips, "your cat is most welcome. Every hero's daughter deserves a home." That evening, Amelia and Gus moved into a beautiful apartment with a view of the entire city. For the first time, the glittering lights didn't feel like a world away. They felt like a promise she was finally ready to claim. Weeks turned into months. Amelia blossomed. Dressed in professional stylish clothes she'd bought with her own money, she moved through the office with a newfound confidence. She was a quick learner, and her colleagues, now under a new and much kinder team lead, treated her with respect. One Saturday, she found herself in a boutique pet supply store in Lincoln Park, searching for the most luxurious treats for Gus. She was happy, truly happy, for the first time she could remember. As she reached for a small, colourful bag of organic catnip treats, another hand reached for the exact same one. Her fingers brushed against the hand of a tall man with a warm smile and kind eyes. He pulled his hand back quickly. "Sorry about that," he said, his voice a pleasant, deep baritone. "I guess we both have a cat with expensive taste." Amelia laughed, a genuine, easy sound. "It seems so," she replied. "Mine's a former street cat who thinks he's a king." The man chuckled. "Mine's a pampered rescue who is definitely a king. I'm Leo." "Amelia," she said, shaking his offered hand. They stood there for a moment, a bag of cat treats between them, and talked. They talked about their cats, about life in the city, about finding beauty in unexpected places. There was an instant, effortless connection, a spark of recognition. It wasn't a rescue. It wasn't a transaction. It was just a simple, hopeful beginning, a meeting between two equals in a sunlit store with the promise of a bright, ordinary and wonderful future. In the end, Jessica's cruelty became her own undoing, and Kevin's cowardice left him with nothing. But Amelia's life was just beginning. The kindness of a man honouring a decades-old debt completely changed her path. But the real twist wasn't the money or the job. It was Amelia, realising that her true strength was never in her circumstances, but in the quiet dignity she maintained and the legacy of honour her father had left her. She learned that a hero's true gift isn't what they leave behind, but the potential they inspire in others. Her story with Leo was just starting, a future built not on a dramatic rescue, but on a shared smile and a simple, kind connection. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey. Amelia's story reminds us that you never truly know the battles people are fighting. If this story touched your heart, please hit the like button, subscribe for more powerful narratives, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think is the most important quality a person can have? Ambition, kindness, or courage?